This is Lady Omega, and I've been asked a couple times to do a video giving some explanations and some breakdowns of the Reindeer girls and to tell you where I use them. And we're going to start off with Avelia. I 6-starred her to give me an extra edge in war against green heroes. I fight a lot of Zenkas and Guras and Vigos, and so sometimes she gives you a little extra edge and helping you defeat those green heroes. So she is the hardest hitting hero out of the 5 heroes, with 385% attack on one enemy and 100% chance to remove 2 positive statuses from an enemy. So that's always good to have an attacker that also removes positive statuses, and with statuses being a thing of the game, having a dispeller and a hitter is really helpful to me. Her passive is if the target is not affected by any positive statuses, she has a 100% chance to inflict snare for 4 turns, 2 times when using her special ability. So, if the target doesn't have any positive statuses at all, she's going to put snare on a target for 4 turns, 2 times. So, 4 turns, when you start seeing the turn shift and keep going down in turns, when it gets to 0, you're going to see their health deplenish, that they can go from a lot of health to practically nothing, similar to dots, except they don't take away with each turn. You have to wait until the counter runs out to see the effect of these snares. So I really like them. I'm really a big fan of snare because there's only so many dot heroes in the game. So the snare gives me that extra flair that I need. All of these girls are immune to decreased speed, and they all have special passives with Mr. and Mrs. Claus on their team, which they all differentiate on that. And particularly with Avelia, her ACC is increased by 40% if there's a living Claus or Mrs. Claus on her team, and they all have the mana gain increased by 1. As stated, I use her to give me the extra edge that I need to fight green heroes in epic wars. Usually these girls are very smushy. They're just glass, but they are useful. They're not game changing, but they are very useful. And if you happen to find a better way to use these heroes, I would love to hear where you use them. On to the next. Now we're going to be discussing Jade. She deals damage to a single enemy, 370% attack, 100% chance to inflict heal block on a single enemy for 4 turns. The heal block can be very useful in a lot of situations. I've ran into situations where I really needed to heal and couldn't, so she pretty much renders that green dragon useless to at least one hero. Her passive is if the target is affected by increased defense or protected shield, she has a 100% chance to remove 4 positive statuses and a 100% chance to inflict snare for 3 turns on the target when using her special ability. So, but only if they are affected by increased defense or protected shield does she have a 100% chance to remove 4 positive statuses and a 100% chance to inflict snare for those 3 turns. If they don't have that increased defense or a protective shield, her passive isn't going to work. You're not going to get the snare, you're not going to get her use of the passive removal or the positive removal statuses. So she's really be used in a particular team, and ideally I'd like to use her in war against a Tornus or an Aurora or a Polina with a cover set. So just like Avelia and any of the other ones, she just gives you an extra edge with tile damage and extra damage in war to these heroes for the strong color. Her advantage with using Mr. and Mrs. Claus on this team is her attack is increased by 20% if there's a living Claus or Mrs. Claus. And of course her mana gain is increased by 1. So the extra attack is good, but I haven't figured out who I would substitute to put a Mrs. Claus or a Claus in on a team with these ladies. So I built this one on attack, a little bit on attack, but a lot on accuracy. I put a caster set on her because she was just at 18 mana gain, and 19 is still really kind of low. They're smushy. This one, I have quite a bit of HP on her, and she's kind of fast, but she does what I need her to do and more. So, on to Hannah. As you can see, Hannah's still at a 550. If you think about it, there's not a lot of red heroes on defenses in war, so I haven't had a need to ascend her, but I built her with the Mystic and a caster set. As you can see, the mana is still very low. I don't even have her skills leveled, but let's get into her skills. She deals damage to a single enemy, 370% attack, and 100% is to chance to inflict snare on a single enemy for 3 turns. So she has the same attack as Jade has. The difference with the two is Jade gives heal block for 3 turns, and Hannah gives snare for 3 turns. So for 3 turns, you only have to wait 3 turns for her snare to hit its end to take out their HP, some of their HP. Her passive is 40% chance to use her special ability twice if target is affected by Fortify or Protective Shield. And if she has a Mr. and Mrs. Claus on her team, her speed is increased by 30. Mana gain by 1. So it's really cool that she gets a speed increase if Mr. Claus and Mrs. Claus is on her team. However, just like I said with Jade, I don't know who I would substitute to run these in a team. It could be fun to play around during Christmas, but yeah. So I would, if I had to use her, I would use her in war against the Najjar, Gara, Taurus teams. Anybody that's going to cast that protective shield, and in hopes of her going twice. So, moving on to Lucy. Lucy is probably my favorite out of the sisters, and even though she's at a 550, I just haven't been in a situation to where I've had to use her, because if I'm in campaign, I am using a AoE to clear those waves faster. The same thing with the rifts. So I haven't really had the need to ascend her. You don't fight a lot of purple heroes in epic heroes in war where we're at right now. The only one that I could see her hitting, it would be Nika is probably one of the ones that is mostly used in epic wars. But other than that, I still have so many ascended from there. There would be Gojimir and Rosina and also Frank. So Lucy hasn't had her chance in my roster yet, unfortunately. But as you can see, I built her with Brave and Warrior. I focused more on her attack on anything. She does have a really good attack leader skill of 32%. And if I'm not mistaken, that's similar to Frank. So I may be wrong about that, but so, okay, getting into her special. She deals damage to a single enemy, 325% attack, ignores 20% defense and 100% to inflict status block on a single enemy for 4 turns. And this is what makes her my favorite. Any hero that ignores any type of percentage of defense, they tend to hit harder. And the status block, with statuses being such a big part of the meta right now, that status block is so helpful to have. So in her passive, her damage is increased by 45% if the target is affected by increased defense or protected shield. And if she has a Mr. and Mrs. Claus on her team, she restores 30 mana to herself on the start of her turn. I really like the 45% damage increase, given that she also ignores 20% of that defense when she does hit. So I wanted to build her more attack, but I really think that she's like a glass cannon, like the other attackers that you will get. But she's still my favorite as far as using her and playing around with her. I like to block them from statuses. And it's a 4-turn status block, so that's almost a whole 5-hero wave. So, yeah, she's my favorite. One more thing I wanted to say about Lucy is if I had to use her on a team and if I could build her to be tanky enough, it would probably, she would probably be useful against a Takeo and a Helica duo team. And the main reason being is Takeo is usually given a cover set, and she'll do extra damage based off of that. And Helica, and Lucy will also give status block. So when Helica goes off to heal Takeo, she will only heal him. She won't give him immunity and everything else. Or I would use her in a case if the team is using an increased defense leader, such as Ferran. So she would be good there too. Though Lucy is my favorite out of the sisters, Celine is the one I use the most. She has a 17 leadership skill for guild-related battles, which would be war. That's what I ascended her for. We face a lot of yellow heroes in epic wars, such as Rosalina and Ferrans and Martins. And so in her passive, you'll get more out of her if they have 2 or more yellows on their team. So as you can see, I used a Mystic and a Curse set on her. I needed her accuracy to be up there just a little bit, and I also made her a little bit more tanky by giving her more defense and HP than I have the other girls. But her special is a 100% chance to inflict snare on a single enemy for 4 turns twice, so she'll stack those up. She'll get 2 snares for 4 turns, and a 100% chance to inflict status block on a single enemy for 4 turns. So again, with the status block, really like the status block. So, and with the statuses, as stated, being up and being a big thing in the game and the meta right now, and I don't even know if that meta will ever change, because the more statuses you can get on your heroes, the better. And you can only get 10 before they tap out. So putting that block on there, especially for a tank, so you can target the attacker or get whoever's going to kill you the fastest out of the way. It's nice to have that on a tank for status block. Her passive is she restores 15 mana to herself at the start of her turn for each dead yellow enemy, and her speed is increased by 15 for each dead yellow enemy. So, as stated, if they have more than 2 yellows on a team, you're going to get a lot of benefit from using Celine, which I do. Her passive that includes Mr. and Mrs. Claus is that her accuracy is increased by 40% if there's a living Claus or Mrs. Claus on her team, metagame by 1. So I had enough accuracy on her. I'm not putting Mr. or Mrs. Claus in there, especially in an epic war, because you can't use them. You can't put a Lego with a epic and kill other epics with that Lego. So I just use her a lot for her speed leader skill. Speed is the name of the game. And so anytime you can get a hero with a speed leader skill, I really try to use those heroes somewhere to get the extra edge. If you found a use for these heroes that I haven't mentioned or haven't discussed in these videos, feel free to share them, because I think the Reindeer girls are kind of stuck in a corner because they don't have a huge use, but they do give you that extra edge in the war. They're not trash heroes per se. I think a lot of people is confused about how the snare works, and the snare will just sit there for how many ever turns it shows you on the buff marker, And when it starts counting down those turns, you will see the HP decrease significantly depending on how many snares you have on there. I've had so many snares on in a war before that it's taken out a whole team, and I thought they would kill me. So snare is awesome. Dot heroes are awesome. And I hope you've enjoyed this video. This is the first video by myself, so I was quite nervous on doing this video. Thank you for watching. Feel free to like and subscribe, and peace out.